Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. Yay. Wonderful to see you all, full house. We need you to be our acoustical buffer, so I'm so glad to see you all. Thanks for joining us on this beautiful Sunday. So this is a co-sponsorship with our sister organization, the Museum of the African Diaspora. And I'd like to ask our friend Elizabeth Gessel from the Museum of African Diaspora to come and say a few words. Elizabeth.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much. My name is Elizabeth Gessel, and I'm the Director of Public Programs at Museum of the African Diaspora. And it is my honor to be co-presenting today's program and working with the Asian Art Museum and Indra Mangal. And also, we've worked with John Calloway several times at the Museum of the African Diaspora, and if you guys haven't seen anything he's done, you're in for a huge treat. So check out MOAD's website, moadsf.org. Come and visit us and support everything that the Asian Art Museum and the Museum of the African Diaspora do together. Thank you. And now I want to turn it over to my colleague, Indra Mangal.
Thank you. I have a parade behind me. Come on in. I love it. I can't go anywhere without a parade now. Woo! They love you. Come on. All right, all right. It's true, you are in for a really big treat today. My name is Indra Mangal, and you today have the pleasure of seeing John Calloway's Buffalo Soldiers in the Philippine American War, A Crisis of Conscience. It's a fascinating, moving, and deeply complex moment in history from both a historical and personal narrative. This multidisciplinary performance examines the experiences of Black soldiers during the Philippine American War of 1899 to 1902. And this piece considers the moral dilemma that Black soldiers faced in their charge to help subjugate Filipino people while at the same time being marginalized themselves. It also depicts the Filipino narrative of resistance to the American intervention, as well as the complex interpersonal relationships between African American soldiers and the Filipino population. I have to say, on a side note, this programming aligns with the desire that I have always had to hear from our diverse Asian American communities, the stories from intersectional perspectives and stories that may not be told in the exhibitions, and ones that are important to telling the fullness of our Asian American experience. So I'm going to introduce John Calloway, but he's related to half the audience, so I don't know if I really need to do that. Is that not true? So John Calloway is a multi-instrumentalist and composer-arranger and has been a mainstay in the jazz, Latin, and global music scenes for more than 45 years. He has performed and arranged music for musicians, including our local beloved John Santos, our local beloved Marcus Shelby, who's here today, Kulintang Arts, who we adore, Pete Escovedo, and Israel Cachao Lopez. His work as a composer includes the theater piece El Son de la Misión, the HBO film Hemingway and Gellhorn, and the Emmy award-winning San Francisco Giants television commercial No Hay Nada Más SF. John is the director. Oh, yes, we have a Giants staffer right in the second row, right? Calloway, John is the director of the Latin Jazz Youth Ensemble of San Francisco and the Afro-Cuban Ensemble of San Francisco State University. We could go on for days with all your, but we don't need to because his music's gonna speak. And here is Buffalo Soldiers.
Salamat sa aming mga ninuno na ninirahan sa iba't ibang karagatan. Kung wala, kawala kami. Kung wala kayo, hindi kami makahinga. Mabuhay ang Afro-Pinoy.
The Buffalo Soldiers, comprised of black regulars formed just after the Civil War, they spent 30 years on the plains and in the Rockies from the Rio Grande to the Canadian border. Initially, the Buffalo Soldiers were commanded by whites, and African American troops often faced extreme racial prejudice from the Army establishment. Many officers, including George Armstrong Custer, refused to command black regiments. In addition, African Americans could only serve west of the Mississippi River because many whites didn't want to see armed black soldiers in or near their communities. They fought in some of the most difficult battles in the western US. They chased rustlers and bandits, they kept the whites out of Indian territory and the Indians in. All the while, they looked out for one another with a loyalty that transcended all else. They were respectable, secure, powerful men who bore arms and participated in major chapters of the national epic. 18 black troopers received the Medal of Honor during this period. The truth here must be spoken about the irony of African American soldiers fighting Native Americans on behalf of a government that accepted neither group as equals. But nonetheless, such confrontations between these two marginalized groups occurred. At the time, the availability of information was limited about the extent of the US government's often genocidal policies towards Native Americans, and some of the African American soldiers had fought Native Americans during the Civil War. Some tribes fought for the Confederacy in a deal to protect their native land.
It's been a long journey on this piece. It's been about a year and a half, and I'm so thrilled to see all of you here. Some of the faces I know, some of your family, and it means a lot to me because it would have meant a lot to my father and my aunts and uncles and my grandfather, whose picture you will see up there at times. So a lot is in your program. You can read about a lot of what this project is about. But essentially, what I would like to convey to you today is the conflict, not just a crisis of conscience the African American soldiers would have had in the Philippines in having to do their duty, which in some times was morally questionable, but also the relationship with the native Filipinos. Both of them, in many ways, in different ways, were oppressed groups dealing with U.S. imperialistic policies. So while the title says Crisis of Conscience for African Americans, it's really the commonalities that African American soldiers and Filipino natives in their resistance to U.S. imperialism saw themselves not necessarily as adversarial. If you don't know about the Buffalo Soldiers, they were units that were formed after the Civil War. My grandfather was in the 24th Regiment, and he fought. My grandfather was born in 1872. He fought in the Spanish American War. He was stationed in Cuba. He was also stationed in Utah. He was stationed in the Presidio, and he worked at Yosemite. And ironically, my grandfather was also in prison 2 miles from here, 2 to 3 miles from here at the Presidio, and you'll get to hear some of the reasons why that happened because of the stances that he took. So I like to let the music speak for itself, but this is essentially what it is. It's a dual narrative, and I hope you enjoy it. So we're trying to do these the pieces in your program as vignettes, and so when the African American soldiers were to report to Manila Bay, they had to go by boat. And anybody, well, I've never caught a boat for that long, but I would imagine it takes at least 3 weeks to get from San Francisco to Manila Bay. And with a boat full of African Americans, if it wasn't going to be gambling, you know there was some music going on. So I wrote a piece called Boat Ride to Manila.
The following are excerpts from Smoked Yankees and the Struggle for Empire, Letters from Negro Soldiers, 1898 to 1902, by Willard B. Gatewood, Jr. You talk about freedom, liberty, etc. Why, sir, the Negro of this country is free man and yet slave? Talk about fighting and freeing poor Cuba of Spain's brutality, of Cuba's murdered thousands and starving reconcentrados. Is America any better than Spain? Has she not subjects in her very midst who are murdered daily without trial or judge or jury? Has she not subjects in her own borders whose children are half fed, half clothed because their father's skin is black? Yet the Negro is loyal to his country's flag. Forgetting that he is ostracized, his race considered as dumb as driven cattle, yet as loyal and true men, he answers the call to arms. George Priolo, 9th Cavalry. Regarding treatment of blacks in Tampa, as long as a colored man will permit a white to kick or knock him around, he is a good black. But when he won't permit that, he is a dangerous nigger, sah. We are men and demand to have that treatment and will it as long as we remain in this section.
So there are a lot of contributors to this project, but I think first I want to introduce you to all the great musicians. Everyone on here on the stage today was strategically asked to be here for a myriad of reasons. They're professional musicians, they're faculty members at San Francisco State, they're some of my students. Some of them are Afro-Filipinos, Afro-Pinoys like my dad. And so I want to make sure that in no particular order, and I'm sure that I might forget some names, not on the band, but other people I have to thank. But I do want to take a moment to say hello to everybody and acknowledge them. On piano, Mr. Murray Lowe. On bass, San Francisco Arts Commissioner and jazz icon, Marcus Shelby. This young man over here, you're going to hear some amazing pipes from him, Mr. O'Malley Horn on spoken word and vocals. My brother from another mother, Deshaun Claiborne on drums. One of the most powerful performers I've been around in a while, one of my students, Ting Alvarez. Also a descendant of John W. Calloway, my cousin, Manuel Dragon. Oh, there's so many more. I'm going to introduce you to the rest because there's a lot of people introduced. Could I ask that all the descendants of John W. Calloway please stand up that are in this room? Would you mind doing that for me? Because I know who I'm playing for. Thank you. Okay, so I told you there were two sides of the story. So here come the soldiers. Well, they'd actually already been in Manila Bay, the earlier American forces. And the Filipino nationals at first trusted the Americans until the Americans and Spain both negated their independence, their Declaration of Independence. So I asked one of our contributors to write a piece that reflected both the indigenous point of view about we don't really need you to tell us we're going to be independent. And he's an educator. His name is Conrad Benedicto.
Quick costume change. Mananakmal, devourer. Long before you, stars revealed to us the hidden paths to the House of Winds and the spirit lands of the West. The beloved daughter pointed us north as the heavens spun around her, and we had already traced the currents leading to and from our island homes. The rhythms for rain we had already gleaned from weeping, and the melodies for sun and sacrifice we had already unearthed from blessing. Epic chants of ancestral lore recited over thousands of monsoons before you ever came. Our loves and lineages already chronicled in text and song. How then can you devour your way to our islands and say to us, we need you? You came here, somehow still empty, despite an entire continent of stories like ours. Our cosmos was whole. We already at sail within it, discovering what to be. We knew ourselves, the science of our verdant fields and shores, our rumbling mountains, and the storied procession of our night sky. There are songs we play for important guests, for we have had them. Notes floating like golden runes from our bright instruments. But not for you, those who take without permission, who eat rudely, ravenously in our house, without even bothering to speak our proper names.
Before I talk about the next tune and introduce this distinguished gentleman, I want to make sure I acknowledge one of my colleagues. I don't want to say former students, but a fantastic violinist, Mr. Sam Brown. So, what would the African American soldiers would have seen if they landed in Manila Bay and were in the central area of Manila at that time, Quiapo, which is where my dad and my aunts and uncles and my lolo and my lola, 14 grandchildren is how many that my grandmother had. What would they have seen? They would have seen some remnants and some aspects of the Spanish influence and Spanish culture that had been in the Philippines for hundreds of years. And all of you that know me know that I write a lot of Cuban music. So I actually went to the Philippines once in 1993, and I was staying at a hotel. Hallelujah, this is when we went down to, and you guys all went to Mindanao, and I had to get back because I was a good teacher. But anyway, I had to be back on time. So I'm staying in the hotel, and I'm hearing this group play, and I'm going, those songs sound like Cuban danzons. And I went up to the group and said, we've been playing this music we've had this in our family for, decades. So my mom was a concert pianist who came, she grew up on Corregidor, and I had a lot of her music that I had found. She just recently passed, she lived to be 99. And a lot of the pieces of music had Spanish themes on it, tango, rumba, those type words. So with Filipinos mostly have, Spanish last names. So I had to write a piece that would be reflective of that. And I wanted to bring in somebody that I really have a pleasure to work with and recorded with us on this project, which you can find on my website. Another Filipino American with a history being involved in the civil rights movement, his parents, Zach Grafilo on violin, a member of the Alexandria String Quartet. And also, two longtime colleagues that go back many years from the Phil-Am community, Marcela Pablos Clark and Daniel Garay. They're going to dance for us. And also, certainly have to introduce this. Phil, I never heard that word before because we used to say Phil-Am. So you're Phil Can, he's Filipino-Canadian, Mr. Chris Trinidad on bass. Oh, gotta introduce everybody. Also, talent to be acknowledged, up-and-coming rising star, Rebecca Rodriguez on percussion. So I failed to mention to you that a lot of the information that was an inspiration to doing this came from a book called Mixed Blessings, and the chapter on my grandfather was called Imperialist Paranoia and U.S. Imperialism, the Persecution and Redemption of Sergeant John Calloway. And he started the first printing press in Manila in 1904. We didn't know all that much about him. It wasn't until about 10 years ago that my cousin Becca in the back, who's done the visual slides, thank you so much, Rebecca, for doing this. An Australian writer wrote about my grandfather, and I'm sure most of my aunts and uncles did not know about his heroic efforts in speaking out against the injustices to the Filipino nationals. And so I don't know for how it would be for you, but to have all this information just dropped in your lap about your grandfather that you knew nothing about, really, it was sobering, and it inspired me to do this project. And so this last piece that you just heard, La Colonial, Quiapo was where my dad grew up, but it was also dedicated to my Aunt Maggie, Magdalena de la Rosa Calloway. She was a actress, singer, and dancer in silent film in the 1920s and 30s in Manila and all throughout Asia. She was big in Singapore and Malaysia, so that piece was for her. Okay, so now with the next piece that's coming up, I think is the center of this connection between the African American soldiers and the Filipinos fighting for their independence, for their country. And so I asked Mario Nomi to write a poem based on the information that I gave him on the writings of my grandfather. So we're going to do a little bit of reading. I'm going to have both readers come up, and then I'm going to have Bay Area poet, spoken word artist, Mr. Mario Nomi. And then followed after Mario's poem, we're going to do a piece called Itim, which I wrote back in 1996. I rewrote it for this, and it's dedicated to my father. And my father was, have you ever seen Bruno Mars? That was my pops, right? My pops was Bruno Mars, father was Bruno Mars. And Itim is the word for black in Filipino, so let's have at it.
In addition to being in the 24th Infantry, John W. Calloway was a reporter for an African American newspaper in Virginia, the the Richmond Planet. During his time in the Philippines, he interviewed Filipino nationals regarding their perception and understanding of African American soldiers. Here are some excerpts.
Question: do the Filipinos hold a different feeling toward the colored American from that of the white? Answer: before American occupation of the islands and before the colored troops came to the Philippines, Filipinos knew little, if anything, of the colored people of America. We had read American history in general, but knew nothing of the different races there. All were simply Americans to us. This view was held up to the time of the arrival of the colored regiments in Manila, when the white troops, seeing your acceptance on a social plane by the Filipino and Spaniard was equal to, if not better than theirs, began to tell us of the inferiorities of the American blacks, of your brutal natures, your cannibal tendencies, how you would rape your señoritas, etc. Of course, at first, we were a little shy of you. After being told of the difference between you and them, but we studied you. As results have shown, between you and him, we look upon you as the angel and him as the devil.
From an interview with Senor Tordorica Santos, a Filipino physician.
By the difference in dealing with us is that the colored soldiers do not push us off the streets, spit at us, call us damn niggas, abuse us in all manner of ways, and connect race hatred with duty for the colored soldier. Has none such for us.
They call us what they call you, us are brown of different hues. They call you what they call us, you are here for blood and guts. They want land, sea and flesh, yet you get nothing but abuse and death. Us are the same, some might say, a history we share is the white man's prey. They treat you like they treat us, boots on backs, whips that crack. They treat us like they treat you, as fuel for an empire that's overdue. They build wealth while we break backs, jumping jitters when cannons crack. Blood-soaked rivers like broken livers, will we ever win our nation back? They call us what they call you, us are black of different hues. They call you what they call us. Kalayaan means freedom. Come join us. A dedication to David Fagan, a black US soldier that joined the Philippine Revolution.
So this next piece is about the moral conflict, the crisis of conscience that not just my grandfather, because it's really indicative of what, if he was feeling these issues, I'm sure that many of the members of the 24th Regiment were feeling these issues. And incidentally, my grandfather was the one that re-enlisted and signed the papers for David Fagan, and I think the US Army were afraid of the concept of David Fagan's, and so that's one of the reasons they went after my grandfather, for no real factual reason. But this is about the moral conflict. We're going to do a little bit of a reading from a book by Gil Boringer, the Imperialist Paranoia, and then we're going to have a spoken word piece by the San Francisco Poet Laureate, Tongo Eisen Martin, who could not be here today, but I will have Umali Horn read. So Ting is going to come up, and then Umali, and then we're going to play my piece, Crisis of Conscience.
Calloway had become friendly with a number of Filipinos, as had many black soldiers who felt sympathy for people who were often treated as inferior and uncivilized. It was a familiar and deeply disturbing scenario, especially as the white Americans referred openly to Filipinos as niggas. Calloway wrote to an African American newspaper in his hometown, the Richmond Planet, that the black soldiers were between the devil and the deep sea in regard to the war. They faced the dilemma of doing their duty for America, where their people were repressed, while they were repressing the nationalist ambitions of a colored race which they found anything but uncivilized. And the concept of inferiority was, of course, an anathema to him. Gil Boringer, author, Imperialist Paranoia and Military Injustice, The Persecution and Redemption of Sergeant Calloway.
It's raining bone, but we don't bother to shield our eyes. 20th century dawns with the vainest of all empire makers, blowing kisses around the rims of our mass graves, around the rims of our incomplete revolutions. Can you make out the symbols in your stomach pains, or be with your mother when torturers return? The rustle of white children who seem to levitate 1 foot higher every post-Reconstruction election, disciples of entertainment and slave trading, writing about courage, pretending that empire is always the middle of a story, making the mistake of sugar making kindling of skin, finishing a captain's blink, poor white words exciting the lynch mob vacation, electorate trudging besides kindling figures, cane stock electorate, landmark social evolution. Or the dominant political act among thieves, this food for a bolo. Fluffy yellow vestige for the buffalo marksman, might as well kill from the gut, or finish this captivity slowly. Topple all of the wanted posters in all of the congressional halls in Ecija. Pain expanding with consciousness, I will enjoy strength when it finds me. I will not tell anyone when I have found peace, seeing through this sound what Sam Hose taught you before you shipped out. Seeing through this permanent sound, seeing through perfect sound, millions of rebels that constitute this one belly, kindness that our dreams crawl through, cousins to the plant life, our present from the heavens, pedigree stylized with metal and other combinations of light. Nowhere else I'd rather be when I lose the ability to fly. A hand lands on a drum, skirmishing with devils. I saw the whole world in 20 minutes. I saw 2 peoples in a glass box, a ghost jungle in the corner of a room. I saw mirrors on the ridge lines, thousands of empty rifles made into a palace for the python, rotting whiteness over 7,000 islands, colonialism sloshing around the tip jar, smells other than both night and day, other than both dawn and dusk. This aggression of the shadow that leaves the infantry. I saw a child, David Fagan, surveying my fate. Handcuffs privately made, robber barons whispering white angst at neck wounds, our music impressing enemies, the most rigid seconds of Spain and death and Yankee candy, exposed death dates, a dance floor for Fagan's brood, a fate unseated. It was raining bone.
So, why did my grandfather the U.S. Army tried to court-martial him, and instead they discharged him with a dishonorable discharge, but they actually put him in prison. They sent him back to Presidio, and he was already married to my Lola. And then he came back to the Philippines somehow, and they found him, and they said, "You can't be here. You're no longer in the Army, you need to go." So they put him back on a ship. He ended up in the Presidio. He lived in San Francisco for a while on a street called East Street, which doesn't exist anymore. Eventually he made it back to the Philippines, and the US had already subjugated enough people that it didn't really matter anymore. And the reason that they were afraid of my grandfather was because of David Fagan and of other Filipinos who decided to, for whatever reason, in David Fagan's case, I really believe he had nothing to live for. They had beat him down so much that it just, for him, it made sense. There's nothing for me. They're just going to keep giving me corporal punishment. So he joined the Philippine Revolutionary Army, and that scared Funston. You know that street Funston that we know about? Well, do your little reading on Funston, because Funston was not what I would call a model citizen of the Philippines, right? A model general. And so my grandfather wrote a letter, and I have the honor of reading what my grandfather wrote. But also today, this letter was written, walk that back for a second. This letter was written to a Filipino planner named Thomas Consunji. And the Army found this. Their investigative units went into to Thomas's house, and they found the letter. And based on that, and you'll read the letter, I'll read it to you. Based on that, they said, Calloway's got to go. We have the honor today to have us in the house the grandson of Thomas Consunji. And I'm going to ask for Thomas to stand up. So Thomas, I'm going to read to you this letter. Stay standing, please, if you don't mind. So this is my grandfather's letter, and I have the honor and the duty to read this letter. After my last conference with you and your father, I was constantly haunted by the feeling of how wrong morally we Americans are in the present affair with you. Would to God it lay in my power to rectify the committed error and compensate the Filipino for the wrong done. The day will come when you will be accorded your rights. The moral sensibilities of all America are not yet dead. There still smolders in the bosom of the country a spark of righteousness that will yet kindle into a flame that will awaken the country to its senses. John W. Calloway, in a letter to Thomas Consunji, planter, of which Calloway was deemed a dangerous element by the U.S. Army.
was born by the river in a little tent. Oh, and just like the river, I've been running ever since. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gon' come. Oh, yes, it will. It's been too hard living, but I'm afraid to die. 'Cause I don't know what's up there beyond the sky. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gon' come. Oh, yes, it will. I go to the movies and I go downtown. Somebody keeps telling me don't hang around. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gon' come. Oh, yes, it will. Then I go to my brother and I say, brother, help me please. But he winds up knocking me back down on my knees. Well, there've been times that I thought I wouldn't last for long, but now I think I'm able to carry on. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gon' come. Oh, yes, it will. In a long time. Then I go to my brother and I say, brother, help me please. But he winds up knocking me back down on my knees. Oh, there've been times that I thought I wouldn't last for long, but now I think I'm able to carry on. It's been a long long time coming, but I know a change gon' come. Oh, yes, it will. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gon' come. Oh, yes, it will.
Afro Pinoy right there. So we have one more piece perform, and as I told you, this is a journey that I didn't know I could take. I mean, you think of being an artist, I've been playing for a long time, it will be easy, but it's never easy. And if you look on the list on the back of all the people I need to thank, and I'm sure I'm going to miss some of you, and they're on this list, but the person that was our documentarian for the Calloway family for many years. I know there were many of you, okay, so don't get on my case, but there were many of you. But Becca and Deborah Calloway in the back, thank you. They were documenting and they go, check this out. Yeah, sure, sure. I never paid attention until that chapter came in and it just blew me out. Part of my journey started in reconnecting with my Filipino heritage about 30 years ago when I played with, actually went to the Philippines and spent several years in this group, and it opened up a world for me that, you know, I had previously shut myself out of for various internal conflict reasons. But I also want to acknowledge Alleluia Panas standing in the back. Alleluia, thank you. Also, yeah, I promise I'll make this long, but it's really important. I know he's not here, and I'm sure he's still alive in Australia, but the author of the book that opened up the doors for a lot of information and a lot of joy for my family, Gil Boringer from Australia. He's going to watch this video. Also, Michael Murray, the book Fagin. It's one of the books, usually we get a book, we don't read it. I read the book from the beginning to the very end, and I'll let you know that the U.S. government never found the body of David Fagin. It was never sure that they ever found him. They said, oh, we found him, and they produced the body, but they weren't sure. So, Michael Murray. More recently, and you know, I think starting this idea of this project came twofold from Yerba Buena Gardens Festival gave me some seed money, and I didn't know what to do with it. And my good friend Arturo Riera hit me over the head. Bang, why don't you do something about your family? And I go, oh, that makes sense. So I'd like to acknowledge Cristina Ibarra and Arturo Riera. Thank you so much for that. But also, again, there's many, and they're on the list. And I'm sure I'll forget people. Ooh, something's ringing in my ear. It's my hearing aid. So, I want to thank the sponsors, the Arts Commission, for giving us the bigger grant for this and helping me see this through. I was an arts commissioner in San Francisco from 2008 and 2013. I was really, it was a labor of love, and I enjoyed it. But giving me the funding to see this and awarding me really was how we were able to do this project. And also, the MOAD contributed, and the Asian Art Museum. So thank you all. But I especially want to give a thank you to Indra. Indra, come up to the front, please. So Indra came to my first performance in February of 2022, and I was just done with it. She goes, you got to do this show again, and you got to do it at the Asian. And I'm looking at her, you're out of your mind, you can do this show again. And she saw the vision that I could not see. So Indra, thank you so much. So again, there are a lot of people, and I want to thank all of you because a lot of my family's here, but in particular my brothers and sisters, my brother and my sisters that are all here, and they've come, but all my cousins, because our uncles and aunts are no longer here, but if they were here and they had read this book, I'm sure maybe Auntie Juanita would have maybe been the only one, right? But much of this information, none of my aunts and uncles or my dad knew about, and this has just been a blessing upon blessing. So, this is for you guys, and Angie, thank you for the last year and a half of just dealing with me not wanting to talk to anybody, and just I gotta work. So, you guys know that one, right? You're married to a third person. Anyway, we have one more piece here, and this was a piece that I originally recorded in 1999. It was called Diaspora, and a lot of it had to do with identity issues and feeling like the diaspora is a place where I belong because I seem to be off-cast from everything. But I wanted to put it in the context of this whole piece. And so I asked someone that I just met recently, but we have a lot of cultural commonalities with Cuba. I asked her, if she came up to me, she had a performance I had, and she says, I'm a spoken word artist and poet, I'd like to be involved. And I said, I don't know if I have the space. But it came clear to me that we needed, I needed this piece. I also very big on being inclusive, and I wanted to make sure that we had a female contribution in terms of the spoken word. So I've asked Amy Susada to bring in one of her pieces. Please welcome Amy Susada.
The future of the Filipino, I fear, is that of the Negro of the South. No one has any scruples as regards respecting the rights of a Filipino. He is kicked and cuffed at will. Drawn up and degraded before their eyes, cast into prison after prison, stripped to the nether and searched time and again, humiliated to the point of distraction, my very soul brutalized. Remember that I too was a member of an oppressed race. John W. Calloway, Sergeant Major, 24th U.S. Infantry.
Echo, echo, echo. Hear the voices call across the generations. We imagine back as brown and black. We imagined them then, brown and black. How whiteness saw us all with bent over backs as labor, serving their favor, fighting their wars. Loyal, dignified, but still, our souls brutalized. They call us what they call you, they call you what they call us. Echo, 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 hear voices call across time. A grandfather speaks to his grandchild through photos and words. Today we pair voices with music and rhyme. A grandson finds a hero in his namesake, the mixed blessings of mixed ancestries. The voices mixed like instruments through jazz, voices mixed like flute, kulintang, conga into textured song. They treat you like they treat us, they treat us like they treat you. Echo, echo, echo. What became of the descendants of the Buffalo Soldiers? Some stayed, some returned. The mixed bloodlines of two oppressed peoples. Hear the mixed sounds of their heartbeats, drumming, thrumming across time. Mixed melodies, and always, always the echoes bring us back. Echo, echo, echo. What became of the descendants of the Buffalo Soldiers? Some stayed and some returned. Some became the mixed blessings who speak back through time. But through these sounds, we all inherit the past. Inherit the past, be it legacy or crime, be it echoes of torment, souls brutalized, be it echoes of families forming lasting bonds. These mixed blessings echoing through time, we hear them echo, echo through time, echo, echo.
What will you do with these stories? What will you do with these stories you carry in your ears, your eyes, your hearts? What will you do when these sounds thrum, these melodies float, when they haunt you as these sounds fill your throats? How will you carry on these echoes?